I guess I should start out with an informal introduction. My name is Richard, and I'm an independent reporter, or rather, I work for a small town newspaper. I rarely get any exciting stories, which wouldn't surprise most people, as I've only been reporting for a year now. After my house fire killed my family and forced me to move to a less expensive condo. That is enough about me, though, and I think I should get to the subject matter of this article. I guess you could say I'm highly studious about things paranormal. I've covered at least three paranormal stories and have always been on a hunt for logical answers to them. There's only one story thus far that truly grips me, and that one is the story I wish to describe to you. This is probably my last story, as I wish to capitulate my current hobby. It'll begin short and sweet. I'm rather unpopular, and rarely get calls from other people wanting to share their story. So, when I get a call from someone, I'm usually the one to jump on them, not the opposite. I'm used to attending cook-off competitions and restaurant review boards, so it comes to a shocking surprise when a story worthwhile comes my direction. Either way, let's begin. On about January 12th, 2007, I had gotten a call from Fiona G. Esther. I guess I should have tried, blocking out a name, but it doesn't matter anymore. The call had arrived on the near anniversary of the fire that had purged my life, so I found that a bit odd, but nonetheless not important. I had answered it as I'd often answered surprise calls. "Hello?" I had asked. "Yes, this is the reporter who runs the editorial in the Canyon City Daily." Canyon City was a small town in Colorado, just a few miles from the famous Royal Gorge. "Yes, that would indeed be me. I have a story, if you don't mind, if you wait here?" "Most certainly." By now, I had begun thinking about the odds of someone calling me up on a Saturday morning, but thought nothing too stark about it. I had been 5 minutes before seeing an answer back. "I have a story for you," she remarked, that faint sound of sorrow emanating in the tone of her voice. "I believe that you must. I can't give you much details now, but you could take my address and meet me tomorrow?" Finding the tone of her voice become even odder, I had just tried to comprehend all this meant. "Surely," I agreed, and she gave me an address in the far north side of Denver. It was odd that she had gotten my number from a side of the state that didn't receive my newspaper. The urge for an interesting story, however, allowed me to easily forget such odd facts, and agreed to meeting with her tomorrow at 9 in the morning. Then she hung up. I don't usually work Sundays, but when I do, it's normally for some type of in-town event that would easily make headlines among fellow Canyon City dwellers. This has probably been my third out-of-town coverage, too. I usually tend to stay local when it comes to reporting, but either way, enough chit-chat, and let me advance to the predicament that changed my life. I had arrived at her house promptly at 8:30, about half an hour before I should have been there, but early morning traffic is usually bad on Sundays. Either way, arriving early was a part of her schedule too, it seemed, as I hadn't even gotten out of my car before she came hustling out of her door with pen and paper, walking up to my car frantically. She hadn't even washed or combed her hair. I could describe everything about her, but the most remarkable feature was her plumpness. She was highly overweight. "Come on," she said, "no need to wait." I had gotten out, and was in the threshold of the house when a sudden feeling of anxiety came over me. I decided that a feeling of anxiety often leads to better stories, as there is always that feeling of the rush. She handed me some pen and paper, and she sat on the kitchen table with a look of dismay on her face. She was still in her pajamas. "This house was built on a graveyard," she remarked. She nodded towards the paper, and I began taking notes. "I've been alone all my life, until about a week ago. My neighbors told me that if I were to tell anyone, they'd think I was crazy. I feel crazy, don't you?" She was sweating. She got up and pulled my chair while I was still sitting in it to the nearby living room, the wood laminate scraping beneath me. I thought I could hear a moan. The current of thought pushed itself away as I looked into a field of black lines and curves. Curves that formed, I don't know how to put this besides just going out with it, faces. Some small, some large, some frowning, some smiling, I swear to God, some moving. I was in shock. I didn't feel afraid, scared, anxious, just cautiously shocked. People say it's mildew. I say it's the cemetery. I look bewildered, not saying anything. These aren't even the worst of them, Richard. I had not once mentioned my own name. I was even more bewildered, still not saying anything. Sometimes they talk. Sometimes recall past events, even future events. Some threaten me. I swear one of them tried to bite me. Leaning down at them, I recalled a story I'd heard, something similar to known as the Bismuth faces. That was all I could connect it to. She continued. These aren't even the worst ones. I'll take you down to the basement. Haven't been down there in weeks. I just can't. How long have you been living with this? Ever since I bought the house. But they get much worse. I'll show you. Dropping my pen and paper and arguably never seeing them again, I walked in a large circle around the majority of the faces, as I was afraid of what would happen by stepping on them. I had made it to the cellar door. Go down there by yourself. I don't want to go, she said. She handed me a flashlight. It took a deep breath and stepped on the first stair. A shriek of terror filled the room as I unknowingly stepped on one of the faces. Then almost I stimulated the whole basement in a sound of voices, some panting, some whispering, some talking, some screaming. I couldn't distinguish anything. However, this overwhelming curiosity grasped my hand, as my hand grasped the railing, carefully dodging the faces as best I could. I saw that as I descended deeper, there were dates alongside of the faces. Death dates. The room stank of mildew, definitely, but the faces were clearly not the work of nature. I'm not even sure they were the work of anything earthbound. I creepily walked along the floor of the cellar, and I eventually found another door. The door had spider webs, and looked as if it was waiting to be opened for years now. There was, however, breathing behind it. Curiously, as fear has never accomplished stopping me from investigating, I broke away from the webs. I turned to the door, so that I was eye to eye and face to face with the wall that had become covered in dark gunk with faces growing out of the walls and floor and ceiling, as if they were fungus fruiting bodies. I had screamed, not because the faces were all smiling down at me, or because the faces were mostly charred to bone-like prints, or even because the faces didn't blink. I screamed because the faces were recognizable. People I knew from my life that had died in my house fire. And as the door closed behind me from an invisible force, as I was staring into the face of fear, I also screamed because the single evilest thing in that room was a mirror, or rather, a metaphoric mirror of my own face, attached to the wall, with the death date of approximately a year ago.